Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Happy February. Hope that you guys are staying cozy and warm. Here in Northwest Arkansas, we still have snow on the ground from last week, but it's supposed to warm up this week. I really love the winter. I'm really thankful that we're getting a lot of precipitation and winter weather this year. But I know that it is a struggle for people to try to drive and get around and get to work, and especially if you lose power. We never did lose power for any long degree of time like that would make us, in a danger during this last storm that we had. But we did have multiple times where it flickered on and off and acted weird. So I am really thankful for that. But I know a lot of you guys have struggled the last week or two. So I do hope that everybody is warm and toasty and safe and comfortable. And let's talk today about the things that I read in January, my reading goals, this last week or so worth of reading. Let's just get all caught up on everything that I have been reading in this last little bit. All right, so in my last check-in video, I talked about how I was kind of feeling slumpy. I had just finished Emma M. Lyon number 7 and just kind of in a little bit of a slump, just kind of feeling like I don't know what else to read because that was so good. But I quickly got over it and decided to go ahead and finish up reading Take Courage by Samantha Ellis. This is marketed as a biography of Anne Bronte. So I started this earlier. I started this like in the fall sometime, and I got almost halfway through in the fall, and then I stopped reading, and so I decided to go ahead and finish that up. I would say ultimately I'll probably look for another biography of Anne Bronte, but I did give this 3 stars. It was just really more of a biography of the entire Bronte family, friends, everybody they knew, and there was even a couple of chapters on Anne's characters, which were packed full of spoilers. I think that was my biggest frustration with this book, is it spoils so many books, like a dozen, 15, 16 books. Not just Bronte books, all kinds of books, all kinds of classics. It's very frustrating that the author would do that to the reader. I don't know why. I just think that's such a rotten thing to do. Tenant of Wildfell Hall and Agnes Grey were so detailed, spoiled, that you don't even need to read them. She just told you everything and then psychoanalyzed it all and compared it to Anne, and it was very frustrating. There was the good majority of a couple of chapters at least that I had to skip just so I wouldn't have Tenant spoiled for me, and thankfully a lot of the other ones she spoiled I had already read, but that's just not okay. You don't do that without warning, at least, right? And that seems to be what a lot of the Goodreads reviewers also had a real issue with, is how free she was with that, and also then how free she was with assumptions. And I really had an issue with that too. It sounded in the beginning like the goal of this author was to maybe elevate Anne a little higher, maybe show how she was just as important as her sisters and should be just as well, renowned, and history has done a disservice to her by sort of pushing her into the background, and then just showed kind of how, in some cases, people around her aided in that, specifically Charlotte, and then how maybe she caused some of that herself. But I think that the way that the author went about doing this, by putting in every chapter, she's putting Anne up against someone that knew her, that she knew, actually proves the opposite, which is that Anne's story is very difficult to tell without propping up against other people. There's way more in this book about others than there is about Anne, and it's more about how others shaped her life rather than how she shaped the lives of others. And I don't think that that's because Anne is a significant person in history. I think it's just because we probably know a little less about her. She probably wore her heart a little bit less out there, and she wasn't controversial. She addressed things in a non-romantic way. So for instance, one of the things the author brings out is the fact that Emily, and especially Charlotte, really romanticized abusive men. Now, I don't necessarily think that Emily romanticized Heathcliff and the other abusive men in Wuthering Heights. I think it's more that history has taken some kind of twisted view on that story and made it out to be a romance. There are many of us dying on the hill that is just not a romantic story in any shape or form, and I don't think that Emily meant it to be. I think that the sympathy that we're supposed to feel towards Heathcliff is for his own soul and not for his love life. So I wouldn't necessarily agree that Emily romanticized abusive men, more that it's just her abusive man became romanticized. However, Charlotte very much does romanticize the idea of a man dominating a woman, of him in his angry and narcissistic behavior towards a woman is somehow romantic, about a man making a woman want him because of the evil way that he treats her. Like, she really is kind of sick about all of that. And that's one of the reasons, the many reasons why I just can't stand her or really anything she has written. I don't like any of Charlotte's books, and I don't like her. And that's probably why. I think she's one of the people that I'm referring to when I say that the Victorian age may have been about oppressing women, but it was way more women oppressing women than men. And it was in stories like that that make women think that that kind of behavior is romantic, and it perpetuated clear into, the corset busting novels that our mothers and grandmothers were reading in the 80s. And anyway, okay, tangent over. Anne's story just isn't juicy enough to carry down through history. She didn't make enough waves, right? She was trying to stand up for things like safety in the home and the rights of women and just kind of stable things. Stable, boring things that don't tickle people's ears, right? People who are mature and stable and selflessly serious about trying to make a good mark on the world usually sort of fade into the walls of history, and the weirdest and most controversial remain heroes and legends, right? I will have to say that the book did serve to open my eyes a little bit more to the character of Anne Bronte, and I still can't move her into the spot of number one because Emily is my number one. And I've always put Charlotte at the very bottom of the barrel of anyone who ever lived in her county, let alone the entire country of England. So I guess Anne does remain in second place. However, she is no longer there by default. Instead, she is there by merit. And I did reread Agnes Grey several months ago and still did not find it compelling in the least. But I am interested in reading Tenant of Wildfell Hall. So I will get to that hopefully in the next year. In the next year or two, hopefully it will be on my list, but I am glad that I read this, but I really think that I would like to find something that's a little less about the author and her sort of relationship with Anne and the Brontes and the Bronte stuff and the Bronte stories and all that. There was a lot of autobiographical, here, let me sort out my life sort of things from this author, and then just a lot of filler information. And I really would just like to read something that just gets to the heart of Anne without all the extra, right? So we'll see. If anybody has any recommendations, let me know. All right, and then over the weekend, I read Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome. This is a book that I actually owned quite a while ago in one of the vintage Penguin paperbacks. I had bought it in England. I bought it in York, actually, the year that I went to see the Bronte house. And then I did this massive book clean out a few years ago and decided to get rid of it. And then I reread it and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I got this one with my Pango credit. And so I'm loving Pango, by the way. And I enjoyed it. It was funny. This I actually had on my list to read for February. I sort of cheated. So February, with Anne's Reading the Classics Challenge, the challenge was to read a funny book and a funny classic book. And so I had picked this and put it on my list. And then over the weekend, I just wanted to get started on my February TBR. And so I went ahead and read it. So technically, maybe I need to find another funny classic, or I could just cheat and maybe Anne won't watch this segment of this video and it'll all be fine. But I did enjoy this. It's about three guys who take a trip down the Thames or up the Thames. I guess they're going up the Thames because they go from London to Oxford. Yeah. Pretty sure that'd be up, right? Anyway, they take a trip on the Thames in a boat with a dog, and just kind of their adventures and misadventures. The book, I guess, originally was written to be kind of more of like a travel log, like here's what it's like to travel up the Thames. And there was a lot of history written into it, and it was meant to be kind of a more of a serious book. But when the editors got a hold of it, like the guy was publishing it serially, and after a couple of weeks of seeing like how humorous it was, they started like editing out all of his history points and just keeping it a humorous story. So how he felt about that, the introduction doesn't actually tell us, but I'm glad that I read the introduction. I very rarely do, but it was a really short one, so I figured it couldn't have too many spoilers. And so I did read it, and I was glad because it helped kind of set the stage for who this guy was and, you know, his purpose for writing this and just, you know, kind of the general gist of what's going on here. It really did help. So in this case, Everyman Library, at least this version, has a good intro with no spoilers. But yeah, they just all various things that they get up to, funny things, and just the dynamics between these guys and the sense of humor of the author. So it's the author and his two friends. It's sort of autobiographical, although he probably does embellish some things. But his humor, it's a dry humor. It's funny. Every now and then it was a little too dark for my tastes, and I think it was honestly just because he was just a single guy, and it wasn't inappropriate humor. It was just kind of dark and a little much, like things you just wouldn't say, right? But I think he was kind of like a single guy writing for a male audience, and so like tougher skin than us women, I think. And then some of the stuff went over my head a little bit. I had to research a lot of like the boating practices and things. And even then, sometimes I didn't quite grasp what they were talking about. Just a few things that were kind of didn't age well. But for the most part, this is a funny story. I thought it was worth reading. I'm glad I did. Apparently there is a part 2, 3 Men and a Bummel, which I don't know what a bummel is. I would have to look that one up, but I don't know if I'll read it. I might like someday down the road, but I have no plans right now. But I was happy to get this done because it's one of my 50 by 50s. And I also completed the challenge for February a little early. Overachiever me. I've had 2 DNFs this past week. Both of them soft DNFs, more just not really in the mood. This one, I don't know when I will pick this up again. This was the Concord Quartet. This was the book that was kind of my Nathaniel side quest. It features Nathaniel Hawthorne alongside Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau and Bronson Alcott, and just kind of talks about their friendship and like how they met and why and the philosophies that they shared and that kind of thing. I read up until page 44, and then I decided that I was going to put this away for a while. The biggest reason why is the majority of the book, at least so far in the first 44 pages, is quoted from diaries, and it's just very, very long quotations from diaries. And I just got done reading Followed by the Lark, which is a book that's supposed to be a story about Henry David Thoreau, but instead it's really just his diaries rewritten. And that frustrated me. It was like there were no new ideas from the author. And I'm really feeling that that is the same thing that is going on here. This author really is just quoting massive passages from these men's journals and then just tying them together with a few sentences. And if that's all this is going to be, like, I can just go read their journals. So I wanted just kind of some, I don't know, historical context and insight to give me an idea about these guys and their friendships and that sort of thing. But, you know, if it's all just regurgitated source material, then might as well go get the source material, right? So that was my biggest beef. Secondly, there's just transcendentalism bugs me. And it's just the disrespect to God and the elevation of your own self. It just bugs me. And I was just getting sick of reading these guys, like, who just people that are super book smart but no common sense, right? Or no spiritual wisdom. That really bothers me. Really smart people with very thick spiritual blinders on. I don't know, I just have a lot of patience. So I was getting tired of reading that and decided we'll just put this one away. I might dip into it a little bit more next Nathaniary, and maybe over 5 or 6 Nathaniaries I'll get through it. It's not even 200 pages without the notes, and so it's not that hard to get through it, but content's not awesome. My other soft DNF was Hans Brinker. That's what my copy looks like. It's so cute, right? And cottagey, and I just love it. I DNF'd this one on page 36. And the story's fine. It starts off actually with a lot of information, like historical information, just cultural information on what she's calling Holland. The author is from there, and I think she wrote the book kind of like to give her kids an understanding of where she came from, because that's kind of what she's getting at in the introduction. And then going into the story, I think what's going on is there's going to be a competition to win some skates. And so it's a cute story. It's like a sweet children's story, but I just wasn't interested. It just wasn't keeping my attention. It's a very Victorian children's story, and I think that I just need to be in a certain mood for some of those. So I read a little bit, and I feel like if I just, when I decide to pick it up again, I could probably just read a couple pages back and be able to pick up where I'm at in the story. So I'll put this one away for a while. So let's go ahead and look at my reading journal, my goals for the month. This is my pretty reading journal. It has sparkles and has like sequins and beads, and I love it. I think I did pretty good on my goals for this month. On my 50 by 50 and Anne's Reading the Classics challenge page, looks like that. And for January, it says that I wanted to read The Once and Future King by T.H. White because it was a predicted 5-star read. I did complete that, so I'm going to put a big purple star next to that. It didn't end up being a 5-star read. It ended up being a 2-star read. But I didn't bring it in here. I'll show you guys in my book haul video, but I did get the 5th book, the Book of Merlin. So if you watch that video, I said that the Once and Future King compilation was 4 stories that he wrote over the course of like 20 years or something. I don't know, a couple of decades. And then there is a 5th story that was not included in that compilation that was published after his death called The Book of Merlin, which is the 5th and final story, wraps things up apparently. So I ended up finding that, and I think I found a 1st edition. It's a really nice hardback copy from the 70s or something. So I'll show you guys that later, but anyway, got to read that and then I'll be all done with these stories. But yeah, not a 5-star, definitely 2-star for me. I ranted about that one already, so I'll leave it alone. All right, and then I have joined the Prose and Petticoats reading challenge, which was full of lots of probably difficult books, intimidating anyway, and I ended up quitting the group. I might still read, I'm probably still going to read a lot of these, but we started off at Dostoevsky, Notes from the Underground, and I was just like, this is depressing, which that's all right. But also I didn't understand the historical context enough to follow the deeper things he was saying, right? All I saw on the surface was just a guy who was depressed, and I just wanted to be like, snap out of it, right? Which is not at all fair. But I didn't understand. So I've since learned that the story is in reaction to another story, and there's all kinds of political things mixed in there, and I don't know, and I couldn't learn fast enough to like keep up with the group. And so I decided it just probably wasn't for me at this time. And I just sold it on Pango. So yay. If you bought that, thank you. Okay, and then I have my personal history deep dive. This is the page for that one, not as exciting as the others, just a couple stickers on that one. And I did read a little bit from Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts. My plan for this was to read one chapter every month, because there's 12 chapters. And I did read one chapter this month, and then I really, really wanted to read more. I never did, actually. I just tried to find other things to do because I was trying to keep it over, like, I don't know what it is, just this obsessive need to do it that way, of doing just one chapter a month, but I might just go ahead. I don't know. We'll see where I go with that one, but I don't want to, like, lose my interest just because I'm trying to be sticking to an arbitrary goal, right? Anyway, been reading from that and enjoyed it. I have a page in here for little free libraries that I visited. I visited 6 little free libraries last month, 2 in Arkansas and 4 in Missouri. And then I have my page for my short stories and essays. So in January, I read 3 short stories. I read Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and I actually did an analysis video on that one. I read My Kinsman, Major Molyneux by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and I have yet to do an analysis video on that one, and I might do one, I don't know. And then I read 4 stories from The Children of Dickens, which is this one that my husband got me for Christmas, and once I got going in them, so there's a couple of introductory stories about Charles Dickens and about London of his time, and then I read the story that corresponds with Great Expectations and the one that corresponds with A Christmas Carol, because I've read those recently enough to, really remember everything. And they were mostly just repeats, like, from a section of the book. So that's okay. But like, there'll be a couple of introductory sentences, and then it was just like, here's that portion of the book, which is very interesting to me because this book, it was originally published in 1925. My version is 1947, but the book itself was published in 1925, which is not 100 years since Dickens wrote these stories. So was that before copyright law? I don't know enough about copyright law. I guess I'll have to look that up, but I thought that was interesting that he could sort of pull so many extracts from Dickens's books without any, like, note at the beginning or anything like that. Because if copyright law was in place, that would have been against copyright. However, it's not a big deal now, so, So anyway, just something I was thinking of. But there you go, 3 short stories for the month. And then we get to the January reading plans page. Okay, so first of all, one of my goals was for Nathaniel was to read those 2 short stories I just mentioned, which I did. Our Discord discussions were really good on this. I had several people come and participate and read with me. We had some good talks. Those are all archived on my Discord if you're interested in reading kind of the analysis on these 2. And then my side quest was to read the Concord Quartet, which is that one that I showed you a little bit ago. And I'm going to go ahead and check it off because I did give it a try. And that was really all that I require of myself when it comes to my reading lists. And then I also DNF'd a second side quest, which was The Sinners All Bow, which was a true crime telling of a crime that happened a couple of decades, I think, before Hawthorne wrote The Scarlet Letter, and that apparently The Scarlet Letter was based on. And I got a little ways into that and then just realized I didn't enjoy the writing style enough to read the whole thing. So I just sort of like Googled and found all the information I wanted on that one. So that was Nathaniel. Secondly, the 50 by 50 / Reading the Classics Challenge. My pick was The Once and Future King, the predicted 5-star read. So I can check that one off. And then I also said I wanted to continue with the Pickwick Papers, which I did not actually read them at all this month. And then the Prose and Petticoats group with The Gambler and Notes from the Underground by Dostoevsky. Did not finish that one. Epistolary January. My goal was to read book 7 and 8 of the M.M. Lyon series. I did read book 7, and book 8 should be showing up on my doorstep any minute now. So when I finish the book that I am currently reading, I'll be reading that. So did good there. My historical study, I wanted to start In Search of the Dark Ages by Michael Wood, which I did not actually start that this month, but I did read chapter 1 of the Remarkable Manuscripts book. So one check there. I wanted to read some from Winter Words in Various Moods and Meters by Thomas Hardy, which is my little book of poetry and prose that my husband got me for Christmas. Looks like that. And I did read some, as you can see. Nothing super compelling yet, but I'm committed. And then finally, I wanted to read some from that Charles Dickens compilation of children's stories or whatever, and I did read everything that I felt like I could read without getting spoilers for future stories. So yeah, I feel really good about this reading and everything that I did for this month. I also read a little bit from this, which I forgot that I was actually reading this a little each month, Notes from Walnut Tree Farm by Roger Deacon. So I did finish up December, and now that it's February, I need to read the chapters on January. Looks like to get caught up, I need to read 25 pages, so no big deal there. All right, that's January. I think my January got off to kind of a rough start. It took me a lot longer to read Once and Future King than I had originally planned. Then I moved into the Dostoevsky, which was depressing me and stressing me out because I just found it to be really boring and dull. Then I had guilt because I was like, this is somebody's life and I just don't understand it, and I just like a whole thing, just overthinking, and so I put that away, and so the last couple weeks of January were definitely better than the first few, but here we are, February 1st, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm reading because I have thoughts right now that I hope will be sort of softened out once I finish the story. So you guys will find that out on the next reading update. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope everybody's doing well, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.